welcome to Down to Earth with Terry Virch, where we talk about what matters down here on planet Earth. If you love the podcast, remember to like it, subscribe, and give us a rating. Today, I am super excited to have a good friend and a filmmaker, James Neihouse, with us. James is a member of the American Society of Cinematographers and a longtime filmmaker himself, shooting over 60 movies throughout his career, including 8 space IMAX movies. James, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Terry. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So to prepare for this, I was looking through your IMDb, and you've done it all. You've got camera operator credits, second unit credits, even gaffer, DP.
Yeah, I've got
DP,
gaffer,
producer,
director, production assistant.
Yeah, and
Been there, done
astronaut
that.
training manager.
Astronaut training manager, yes.
So what is your, oh, by the way, I had John Steele on a couple months ago. I don't know if you know John.
I remember that.
Yeah. And he was awesome, but his origin story was really interesting. So I want to hear your origin story. Like what got you into movies? Has this been your career your whole life?
Yeah, I started out as a child.
So did I.
Some people might question that origin, but anyway, yeah, I've been, as a kid, I took pictures a lot and got into photography. And I really, I grew up in that period between Apollo and Shuttle, where a lot of things weren't happening with NASA, but I was really interested in space. I would have loved to have been an astronaut, but I didn't see any way to do that. So I decided, well, if I can get good enough at taking pictures, maybe I can work for NASA someday. So I enjoyed taking pictures. So yeah, let's go that direction. And went to school at Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, which was like one of the top schools at the time, and majored in industrial scientific photography and color technology and underwater minor. So I had, all this background and heavy background in technical stuff, with the idea of going to work, hopefully for NASA. And right when I was getting out of school, I was hired by a little production company in Santa Barbara to go to work for them. They did a lot of oil industry related stuff and underwater things. And we about 2 months after I started with them, Graham Ferguson, who was co-founder and president of IMAX, showed up on our doorstep with this big camera, wanting to shoot underwater with it. And of course, we helped him do that, ended up helping them design and build a housing for it. And I got to know Graham at that point, taught him how to dive, scuba dive. And even though I was the new kid on the block in the company, they took me along to keep Graham alive if he went in the water, and
Where were you filming? Was this in California or?
This was in California. We were filming all around Southern California. And it was a film for the Rubin Fleet Space Theater in San Diego. It was their, they had just opened, I think this was 1976. They just opened in like 73 or something like that. So it was new, it was new stuff. This was the first underwater IMAX ever done. So I became friends with Graham and his wife, Phyllis. And of course, Tony Meyers was his editor. So Tony was on the boat with us occasionally. So I met Tony at that time. And I got hooked on motion picture with IMAX and decided, well, I'm going to kind of shift into that. This is fun stuff to do. Right. And so I took off on the film, world that way. And Graham recommended me for a couple of jobs, and we got hired to do a part of an underwater film for the Smithsonian, and then we got hired to do part of an underwater film, or a whole underwater film for the Minnesota Theater about the Great Barrier Reef. So I got a lot of underwater and IMAX all together early on in my career, and then Graham called me in to start working on some of the space things, and here you are.
That was really the golden age of IMAX, it seems. I remember as a kid, and I know you know, I remember going to see the movie To Fly at the Air and Space Museum,
Yeah.
which was one of the first IMAX movies. It's still one of the, I think it's one of the best movies ever made. It's if you haven't seen To Fly.
Yeah, it's To Fly is one of the classics in the format. And Francis Thompson and McGilvery Freeman did a really good job with that.
Yeah. There's the scene, there's the guy on the canoe, like back in the 1700s, and it starts getting loud, and they fly over the canoe, and all of a sudden there's a waterfall and it drops off. I mean, I remember that scene from 45 years ago. I mean, it's
yeah.
But
To Fly still plays a lot at the Smithsonian. They drag it out every once in a while. So
well, it's on the schedule. I remember when, of course, you and I did a Beautiful Planet. We'll get to that in a while. But when we did the premiere at the Smithsonian, I remember the director there saying, you know, this movie is going to be seen by millions of people. It's going to take a decade or 2 decades, but you know, that's the beauty of these types of films. They just they don't ever get old. You know,
no, they don't. You
can see them forever.
Is like Dream is Alive, which is about the space shuttle program, opened in 1984, 85.
85 is on, yeah.
And it still plays, you know, to this day.
And it's still awesome.
Yeah, it's still great.
It is, yeah, with Walter Cronkite.
Yeah. I just actually showed it to a film class this last week. It's part of
wow.
A lecture,
that is awesome.
Or at least part of it, yeah.
So you got into film, and I was like you as a kid. I took a lot of pictures. My parents got me a Konica SLR, but no one knew anything about photography. So I didn't know what a prime lens was. I had to teach myself about shutter speed and aperture, and you know, I really didn't learn. You were the first real instructor I ever had in camera. Other than that, it was just goofing around, you know, between the 70s and 2012 or 13, whenever we started doing it. I never had any formal instruction.
Well, you did pretty good. You picked it up pretty quick then.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Impressive, young Skywalker.
Well, thanks. Hey, I was going through your IMDb, and the first credit I could find was Mount St. Helens. Mm-hmm. You remember that movie, The Eruption of Mount St. Helens?
I kind of remember The Eruption of Mount St. Helens. Yeah.
Were you there? Like, did you actually film?
Yeah.
The eruption?
That's an interesting story. Like I said, I'd been working for this little production, Marine Photographic Associates in Santa Barbara, and we did the not the Galapagos, but the Great Barrier Reef film with a company in Los Angeles called Graphic Films. Mm-hmm. And George Casey was one of the primaries of Graphic Films, and he was the director, but he's also into volcanoes. He would chase volcanoes anywhere. And so we had just come back. I'd done a few other shoots with him with the camera that we'd had in Australia, and they'd call me up and we'd go out and do a couple of days, you know, at Sandia Labs or someplace space related. And so one Sunday morning early on the 18th of May, I get this phone call, and it's George. He says, "Hey, you want to go to Mount St. Helens? It just erupted." And I said, "Yeah, sure. That sounds like fun." So that was Sunday morning. Monday afternoon, we were on the ground at Mount St. Helens with the IMAX camera, and spent 2 or 3 weeks chasing around with search and rescue, and you know, getting around roadblocks and you know, doing really stupid things, filming the aftermath of the eruption. And actually, it was still blowing up. It was still sending out pretty heavy duty ash clouds.
Right.
So we ended up flying in a helicopter shortly after the big eruption, for the first time when the weather cleared, and you could see actually what happened to the mountain. Nobody really knew what the mountain looked like until that day, and we were in the air pretty much when the weather cleared. So we were the first to actually photograph what it looked like post eruption. Right. And the first we actually flew into the volcano crater at that point, which was really kind of stupid. But
what kind of plane?
It was a Bell Jet Ranger.
Oh, helicopter. Wow.
helicopter. Yeah.
And you had the IMAX camera there.
We had the IMAX camera there, and we've been flying search and rescue with the Air National Guard, and we'd just run and jump in a helicopter with them like a press crew with a really big freaking camera.
Right.
And no, you couldn't mount it. So I shot a lot of stuff from the Hueys with the thing balanced on my knees, kind of crunched down and stuck my knees up and got my eye to the viewfinder. And
that was before Steadicam.
Well, no, there was Steadicam, but it just wouldn't hold that camera.
Right. Oh, really? They had Steadicam in 1980?
I somewhere around there when Rocky came out, that was really the first, Bound for Glory, Rocky were the first movies with Steadicam. So I don't know what time frame that was. I'd have to look
76 or something. Yeah.
I should know that, but I don't.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't have any of that kind of technology, and even if we did, it wouldn't hold a 100-pound IMAX camera.
Right.
So.
Yeah, those cameras were huge, right? And in the film,
big,
your Twitter handle's what, 70 DP?
70 millimeter DP, yeah.
What is that? The 70 millimeter. So for people who remember film, those were 35 millimeter, right? The little cartridges.
Yeah, for IMAX, it's 70. It shoots 65 millimeter actually.
Okay.
And it's big.
Oh wow! So you got the film there.
It's big stuff. Yeah.
And how fast does that go through the camera when you're shooting?
This is what I'm holding up here is 7 frames. It goes through at 24 frames per second. So the film.
Oh wow! And that's 7. So 3 times that every second.
3 times this at least, more than 3 times. 5.5 feet per second through the camera.
So that's a lot of noise and ruckus when that's happening.
Lots of noise. Let's see if I can get back in focus here. My focus puller is there. We go.
Rookie focus puller.
My focus puller went to sleep.
Yeah.
He's heard this story before.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Apple commercial where there's
see a frame of this stuff.
Oh wow.
Work or not.
To put it in context.
This is I can't see it. Oh well, now I'm going to go out of focus again. It's Florida. It's the whole of the Florida Peninsula from space.
Oh yeah, cool. Well, when you see an IMAX movie more than 5 years old or whatever, A Beautiful Planet was the first digital space IMAX movie. So
that was our first entirely digital film for IMAX in space. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
until then it had been filmed in Hubble. For the Hubble film, we shot some digital inside the crew compartment of the shuttle,
right?
Because they didn't have room for camera and film.
The big camera, yeah.
Because of the recovery contingency after the Columbia accident. So
right,
they had all the extra spacesuits in there and didn't have room for us. So
to go from one shuttle to the other if there was an emergency, and so that killed the camera. Yeah, and that Hubble was like 2009 was STS-125.
We shot 2009 was STS-125.
Yeah. So the video technology wasn't that great. By the time we did Beautiful Planet,
it had changed a lot.
It was a lot better.
We used a Canon HDV, wasn't even full high definition camera for Hubble. And it worked pretty well. As long as you didn't try to shoot big, wide, high detailed images. If you're just doing, the guys getting suited up or whatever and flying the shuttle, things like that, it worked out pretty well. But what it did allow us to do was Mike Massimino took that camera and just did man on the street interview of the crew all during the flight. And that allowed us to get to know the crew in a way we'd never had in the past. With a camera that runs 1,000 feet of film in 3 minutes, you just can't sit there and talk to the camera.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah.
But the video allowed us to have that opportunity, and the same with A Beautiful Planet. As you know, you guys did a lot of just rolling the camera and talking and lots of fun stuff, and so it gave us an opportunity that we had never had with IMAX in space prior to that. So I think it made
So
a big
you
difference.
did, speaking of the space movies, you did all, basically, you had some role, I think, on all of them, right? Going back to
I've
Hail
all the
Columbia.
way back to Hail Columbia. I
Yeah.
have a credit on Hail Columbia,
Right.
and
I
then
didn't realize that Tony didn't direct all of them as I was going through it.
no,
Yeah.
she started directing stuff with Space Station. I think was one of her first real directorial, and I think we even had co-director credits on that. But she, with Hubble and A Beautiful Planet, those were her main. Plus, she did some underwater things
Right.
with Howard and Michelle Hall. Uh, so
We're talking about Tony Meyers, who is
Myers.
a IMAX legend. She started with Graham Ferguson back in, I guess, the 70s, maybe 60s or 70s, and ended up
she
directing a lot of the
she
IMAX
was
space movies.
yeah, she was like assistant editor.
Oh, wow.
11 screen,
Right.
spectacular the audience sat on a turntable and rotated around. There were 11 screens in a
Oh, wow.
circular thing, and that combined with another film that was at the Montreal Expo that year, called Labyrinth, was sort of the Canadian contribution to Expo 67. Labyrinth was directed by Graham's partner, Roman Kreuter. And it too was a multi-screen, spectacular, giant screen sort of thing. The problem was the multi-screen required multi-projectors and multiple prints and multiple projectionists and multiple headaches.
and multiple dollars.
And so after that Expo experience, Graham and Roman put their head together and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so they came up with the idea of optically printing all these images onto a much larger piece of film. And that's what got IMAX started, was
oh, wow,
was that multi-image quest.
Right. But it's easier to put it on one big screen than it is
one big screen.
I remember it. The Canadian Pavilion at Epcot, I think, has one of those 360. I'm remembering back to
there's
going
a
to Disney
360 and there's a 180. I don't know which.
Okay.
There's I don't know which is which, but you're definitely correct there.
Something like that. You could sit there and look around, and it was like VR before there were VR goggles. You'd have to go in the room. So you were always interested in NASA, and you always loved photography, and IMAX is making this really cool stuff. So the space IMAX movies, that seems like the perfect fit for you. That was must have been a cool.
It was sort of a dream come true, I guess.
Yeah.
It's funny how things work out, no matter your different paths you choose.
Right.
Had it not been for my going into underwater photography, I grew up in Arkansas. There's not an ocean to be seen, and I decided I wanted to learn how to dive. And part of my selection of film school was the fact that Brooks had an underwater photography class, and Rochester Institute was in northern New York, where it got really, really cold.
Yeah, that's not. I could help you make that decision.
Yeah, so it was that decision to get into underwater that got me into IMAX, which got me into space. So it's funny.
So the space movies, for those who don't know, the IMAX space movies that I can think of are Hail Columbia, about the first space shuttle flight, Dream is Alive, Blue Planet, Destiny Space, Mission to Mir, Space Station 3D, and A Beautiful Planet. I think those are and Hubble. Hubble. Right. 3D. Yeah. And I didn't know that Ben Burt and Graham Ferguson were directors on those. And we talked about Graham. Graham started IMAX, but can you talk about Ben?
Ben, those of you who don't know Ben, Ben's probably one of the most accomplished sound designers on the planet. Multiple Academy Award winning sound designer and director. Just a wonderful guy. He's the voice of Wall-E, if you've ever seen Wall-E. Ben did all the sound for the first Star Wars, well, for most all of the Star Wars films, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., he's had contributions to all those films, and he came along and was doing actually was doing sound for us on The Dream Is Alive. And that's when I first met him in 1984, I guess. He was, yeah, the consummate sound person. He would hear something that he liked, everything else went away, and he was laser focused on recording that sound. At the Space Center, there's a lot. It's on a national wildlife reserve, and there's lots of wild pigs that run around the Space Center. They dig up and they dig the cables up, so they have to kind of keep them under control. So we came back in from shooting one day, and some of the trappers were out, and they had some of these wild pigs caught around the press site. And Ben heard them and grabs his Niagara and runs over and records all these pigs squealing. And this was in 1984. So when a few years later, when the third installment of Star Wars came out, the X-Wing fighter flying by is a combination of those pig squeals and a few other things.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, you brought him to be my sound instructor when we were doing A Beautiful Planet. I remember we had a day with Ben Burt. It was so cool. And I learned, one of the many things I learned from, it was you and Tony and Marsha Ivins, our former astronaut colleague, were kind of the main instructors teaching us how to be filmmakers. And I learned the importance of sound. I mean, you kind of know intuitively, but until you really think about it, like the X-Wing fighter noises, a Star Wars movie would not be a Star Wars movie without that sound. It's half the film, it seems like.
It's more than half the film. It's probably 51% of the film. And here I'm a director of photography, and I'm saying the sound is 51% of the film. I know that if it's not good, it's not going to be my film's not going to be as good. That's for sure.
When we were in space, I took the camera one day. We used the big Canon, video camera, and C500. And I just went around and filmed sounds. I just held the camera still, and I would just film, like the one sound that really stood out to me was the gym equipment, all these metal bars, and the way they're floating, it kind of sounds like wind chimes. So it was a really unique sound.
Clanking.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people are surprised by, how noisy it is on, both on space station and how noisy shuttle was. With all the fans and stuff.
Every module has its own sound, because the fans are different in each module. You can tell where you are in some ways by the sound of the fans. On the shuttle, there was this sound of the radio, like when you hear old space movies, it's beep beep, they call it the Quindar, beep, how are you doing? But when you're in space, there's this kind of ghostly echo sound that I've never heard anywhere else besides on a space shuttle. We didn't have it on the space station. It was, the equipment is the station has 90s equipment, and the shuttle had 60s equipment, basically 70s equipment. And anyway, there was this ghostly sound echo that I've never heard before. That was just one of the many unique sounds of space. And then we filmed the spacewalk, right, with the GoPro, and you can hear space, because you don't hear, there's no sound moving through vacuum, but you can hear like metal banging on metal, and that vibration got into the GoPro camera. And you can hear the fan. There's this little fan like right behind your head spinning at 20,000 RPMs, and you hear that zzz. Anyway, these sounds from space are things that I never thought about until we were making the movie.
I actually talked about that GoPro on Friday in my lecture. About somebody asked about taking cameras out in space, and I said, they just put a little spacesuit on it and take it out.
That's exactly right. The Russians made this little box. It's not powered or anything. It's just a metal box that keeps it from getting too hot and too cold, and it keeps it pressurized.
Thermal stabilization.
It's just a basic box. So you worked on all these movies. Can you talk about the difference, like going from Hail Columbia to, well, first of all, back to Tony, just to give her some love. You know, A Beautiful Planet, the movie that we worked on, was her final one. Unfortunately, she got cancer and passed away, but I think she saved her best for last. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, yeah. She was pretty amazing. Like I said, I knew her for 40 plus years, and
Yeah.
we worked really well together. You know, we were kind of husband wife, work wife, husband
Work wife.
work husband. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and like any relationship, we had our moments, but for the most part, we saw eye to eye on stuff. And you know, the whole idea was to tell the story of the space shuttle, and then the space station, and she had a great way of talking with people. I think talking about sound, the most important part of what she did post flight was to talk with the crew. And you remember she came in and probably interviewed you one-on-one, and just over a cup of coffee, and without writing something for you to say, she would be able to get you to say what she wanted you to say, or what you needed you to say, and
Right.
in a real and that real feeling is, I think, what made the difference between, you know, something that's scripted and you can tell when somebody's reading something, and as opposed to just natural, you know. One of my favorites was we would bring the crews into an IMAX theater after post flight, and they would be the first ones to see the film. Well, outside of myself and the people at the labs, they would be the first ones to see the film that they had shot, and we would bring people like either Ben Burt or Greg Smith in to record the reactions real time. And you know, the thing was, if you say anything bad, we'll throw it out, you know, and you don't have to worry about it. And but we got some of our best comments, you know, from that very first reaction to what they, you know, you guys had shot in space. And one of my favorites from those is there's a shot in space station where they're transferring gear, and I think it's Bill Shepard and Sergey are you know, catching these white pouches of stuff and passing them back and forth, and all of a sudden Marcia comes floating up.
She's a piece of the cargo.
And you know, Marcia's narrating from what she said in the theater, and she says, and occasionally they bring up a woman.
Yeah.
She really,
That's such a Marcia comment.
Use that, but she got talked into it.
That is such a Marcia comment. I love that. That movie was so good. I actually got to go do some of the premieres back 20 years ago. There were lots and lots and lots of IMAX theaters, and there was a lot of astronauts, and so I got to go to the UK, and I did Bristol and Birmingham premieres for that. That was a great film.
Now that was 7 or 8 shuttle flights, so there were a lot of crews that were involved with that film.
Yeah, Tom Cruise narrated it. Space Station 3D. It was a great film.
Yeah.
So the difference between going from Hail Columbia through A Beautiful Planet is, from like a filmmaking point of view, you know, the astronauts are probably the same all the time, I would guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting because Hail Columbia was made pretty much as an outsider. IMAX was an outsider to NASA, just like, you know, UPI or AP or Washington Post or whoever press was covering it. NASA, IMAX was pretty much a press, you know, entity for that film. So they didn't get any real access. We were able to put some cameras out on the launch pad, but other than that, that's about everything else had to be with the press, or, you know, under that auspices. So as that film pretty much was made on speculation by Graham and IMAX, just to show NASA what IMAX would look like with space stuff.
Right.
And that all came about because Michael Collins, when he was director of the National Air and Space Museum, told Graham, he said, you need to fly this in space because it's going to be the best way to show people here on Earth what is the experience of space is. So Michael Collins really got us started into shooting IMAX in space. So after NASA saw Hail Columbia and what it was capable of doing, they said, okay, well, let's figure out a way to fly this camera in space. And that's when the Smithsonian got involved, because they needed some mechanism of transferring funds between private and government agencies. And I don't know all the details of that. I don't want to know it.
No, right.
And then Lockheed Martin got involved as a funding partner. So they paid for the movie to be made as a public service. And then we were able to fly the camera on 3 flights, 41C, 41G, and 41D. So we were on the first flight of Discovery and on 2 Challenger flights. That, that sort of got our foot in the door with the astronauts. They kind of saw what IMAX could do for us. I don't think NASA as a whole really realized what IMAX could do for them until much later. But our relationship was built on mutual trust between the flight crew and IMAX and us, the people on the ground every day, with training the crews. So I think that over the years, and it's 35 years of interaction here, we built that trust base that I think really made the films improve, because the crew knew they weren't going to be made to look like fools, and they were going to get a really good product out there, and people were going to see what they shot. And I think that really helped. The technology really didn't change that much. We went from shooting 2D to 3D. Our last 2D film was Mission to Mirror. Then Space Station was 3D, and Hubble and A Beautiful Planet. So the technology outside of that, the big change was your film, A Beautiful Planet, when we went to all digital on it. But working with the crews was just got easier and easier and easier as the years went by.
Training the crews?
Training the crews, because, people ahead of them would, there were the Marshas and the Brian Duffys and all these people out here that had positive experience with us and was talking us up to the crews coming up. Yeah. And it got to a point where crews were coming up to us asking if they could fly IMAX.
Right.
So, which we'd
I
love to have done.
For me, it was luck. I looked on my Outlook one day and it said, go to IMAX training. And I said, what's going on?
Whoa, what's this?
Yeah. And it was like the happiest moment of my astronaut career. I get to make an IMAX movie. It was awesome, but there was no planning. Nobody said, hey, Terry's really into photography or whatever. It was it just happened to, the dart hit my name. So I'd rather be lucky than good.
That we've been lucky with that. We've had a lot of crew members that were photographically apt.
Right.
And is that a word, apt? You can be inept. I guess you can be apt. But photographically savvy, and you being one of them. But also that took the project to heart. One that's, wow, this is going to be a great post-flight movie for us. And it was good. I mean, Jim Buckley was one of them. Mike Coates, Crippen did great for us. John McBride, in the early days, and then it just they improved from there.
Yeah, like I said, you and Tony and Marcia would come to our classes and teach us things. And astronauts in general are very procedure driven. They're technical driven. A lot of guys don't really like doing PRs and that kind of stuff. They just want to do their job and not be bothered. And filmmaking is really an art. One of the things that we had our shot list. Every movie has a shot list.
Every movie has a shot list.
But I think we had 300. And I think Tony's told all 150 or however many astronauts you guys trained the same thing. She told us, look, if you see an alien in the window, don't not film it just because it's not on the shot list.
It's not on the shot list. Yeah. Yep.
So I've told this joke before, so for listeners, sorry, but the artistic aspect of filmmaking, like the lessons that I learned were the importance of sound, the importance of focus. If it's out of focus a little bit, you can just throw the shot away because it's not usable on an IMAX screen. The importance of motion. When I watch A Beautiful Planet, I still get so mad. There's a couple shots that are wobbly, and I still get mad at that, when I see it on the big screen or on the little screen. But I think most of all is like telling a story. That IMAX is really good at getting a great visual. And there was somebody that wanted to do a project with me they had an Antarctic, they had some beautiful footage, some really great footage, but there was no story.
Yeah.
So you have to tell a story.
It's all about,
yeah.
It's about the story. It really is. And if there's not a real story there, shuttle flights are like, okay, yeah, we're going to get in the shuttle. We're going to go up to space. We're going to do science. We're going to come back. Where's the story?
Right.
You've got to dig and find them. And sometimes you just have to weave them together. But if you tell a compelling story, the visuals come easy.
Right.
If you've got beautiful visuals, then with no story, like you say, it's tough. And sound comes into that. I can remember taking a cousin of mine to a screening of Dream is Alive. And it was a Czech screening, so there was no sound. And I mean, this is pretty, you've seen Dream is Alive.
Yeah.
Rocket launches, there's stuff going on.
It's Walter Cronkite.
But this guy, my cousin, fell sound asleep watching this and it's on an IMAX screen. It was in LA on a giant screen. And so at that point I realized that that sound stuff is pretty important.
It's amazing. But Tony was really good at making a story, right? The Beautiful Planet is a story about life on the space station, but really about life on Earth, and the environment is a big theme. And she was really good at that. In fact, you and I will get to it in a little bit. When we did One More Orbit, it was like, how do you tell a story about it's really cool for like a minute, and then after that, what's the story? But I think we did pretty good job. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the story
I think Tony would have been really proud of the fact that Beautiful Planet was shown at the was it COP26?
Yes, Jackson went there, and I just talked to Jackson is Tony's son. I just talked to him this weekend. Yeah, he went over to COP26, and I think I did some kind of narration or Q&A with him for that.
So I'm very proud of the fact that it's at the UN conference on the environment.
There's nothing better than A Beautiful Planet. I mean, it's the most appropriately named movie ever, I think.
We agonized over that title for a long time.
What were other title options?
A Perfect Planet, I think, was one of them, which was like,
Yeah.
Well, but, it's not perfect. Titles get booted around, and sometimes they stick and sometimes they don't. Like Dream is Alive came out of the speech that John Young gave after the first Columbia landing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
the irony of Dream is Alive, it always, to me, it was like, oh, that was the one after Challenger, because we had the big accident, but the Dream's still alive. It was actually before Challenger.
It was before Challenger.
Yeah. What they meant is the Dream is Alive, like after Apollo.
Yeah.
Not after Challenger. And ironically, it was right. It was just months before the Challenger.
Yeah. The film opened in June of '85, and Challenger happened in January of '86.
Yeah. Wow. So, James, if people know James Neihouse, they probably know you as a space IMAX director of photography. Would you agree? Like but you've done more than that.
I've kind of been pigeonholed into space. Yeah, I'm the space case. Yeah.
But you've got, like I said, 50, 60, more than that movies. And I was looking through your list, and I wonder if you remember these two movies, Summer Job and After School.
Oh my God.
Tell us about the story. What's the story in Summer Job and After School?
Oh my God.
They're rated 4.5 and 3.7.
Oh, I'm surprised they're rated that high.
but most ratings are on a scale like on Tripcase and TripAdvisor and
Yeah,
podcast and
yeah,
Spotify. Those are out of 5.
yeah,
But
yeah. No,
this is out of 10 on IMDb.
uh, those the summer jobs. That was like a teenage T&A movie, independent down in Miami that I called in. I got called in to do about a week of assistant camera on. That came back. That's coming back to haunt me now.
Oh my God. I was going through, I'm like, what movies really stand out here? Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to
After School.
find either one of those. I don't think even have. You might find Summer Job, but After School, I don't think you'll find anywhere. After School started life out as a film called Before God.
Oh wow.
And it was another interesting independent. It was one of the first feature films completely funded and shot in Central Florida back in the mid 80s. And
Wow.
no, it was another sort of TNA,
Well, I will anyway. Those kind of cracked me up when I saw you
yeah.
on those, but so be careful what you film because it'll stick
Yeah,
with you
yeah, yeah.
forever on
So you
IMDb.
got to be careful what you work on,
But you've got this like documentary CV, if you will, but you've also done features. I want to talk about
Right.
features, but some of your documentaries you've done Great Barrier Reef, Michael Jordan,
Right.
Bears sounded cool, NASCAR sounded cool,
Yeah.
Jane Goodall, Chesapeake. I mean, these are all really cool.
They were good projects. One thing we didn't, I'm going to jump back to Mount St. Helens real quick. One thing we didn't mention about Mount St. Helens was it became the first IMAX film to be nominated for an Academy Award.
Wow.
So it was nominated for Best Short Documentary in 1980 or 81.
Right.
80. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the first IMAX film to get an Academy Award nomination.
You're on the Academy, right?
Yeah. Be nice to me. I vote for the Oscars.
It's been a rough couple of years for
It has
awards.
And I'm just wondering if we're going to make any changes to the presentation this year because of the Grammys shutting down and
yeah,
Omicron crap.
Well, they've got COVID to deal with, but anyway, some of that some of those are self-inflicted wounds.
The Academy is great for shooting itself in the foot.
It's hard to watch. I used to love, there's sometimes it's really cool, but the last year or two, it's been hard to watch, but hopefully they get back to, let's just have fun and not turn it into whatever. So
yeah. So I agree.
Movies are fun.
But it's that whole, do you not take the advantage of your platform to further your cause routine?
Yeah.
And I can see both sides of that coin.
And I'm just speaking from the customer, because in some industries the customer is always right, but like we get enough preaching and bad news, and when you go to a basketball game or when you go to watch a movie, you want to have fun. And you don't necessarily want to get preached at, and so that's the dilemma in the customer. That's what moviegoers want. Moviegoers want escape and fun, and I think so.
Want to be told a story.
Yeah, exactly. On the good side of that though, TV is really incredible. When you look at the way TV was in the 80s and 90s, it was very cheesy, push the button for laugh. The writing that they have for series nowadays, the cinematography,
it's amazing the progression of television and series in particular over the past few years.
Yeah, that's where it's at nowadays. It's amazing.
If you look at the production value going into things like Game of Thrones and it's just
it's like Star Wars only on in a TV series, multi-season TV series.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Book Arts, the world's premier creators of unique books that are truly works of art. To see an example of one of their beautiful creations, a limited edition reproduction of the Apollo 11 flight plan, visit www.apolloflightplan.com. So back to your IMAX stuff. You did Tony did a couple of really amazing movies, but I think one of them was Rolling Stones, right? That was
we did the Rolling Stones as concert film.
You shot that, right? Like running around on stage with.
Yeah, me and 7 other of us. We had I think at the most we had the last couple of shows we had 7 IMAX cameras rolling on the Wembley shows, I believe. For sure there were 6 all the time. And
it's cool footage, man. It's really cool.
There was a lot of footage. We didn't have a whole lot of direction. We didn't know what the film was going to be while we were shooting it. Bob Rafelson, the infamous 60s director, brought in to be the director right off the bat. And we all gathered in London and started production meetings. And I had to go off and shoot an eclipse for, I guess it was for Destiny in Space. I had to go to Finland to shoot an eclipse. And so I was gone about 4 or 5 days. And I came back and it was like Rafelson didn't exist. It's like there's no trace of him. And something happened in those those few days that I still don't know what happened, but he was out and everybody's kind of going, well, what are we going to do? What are we shooting? Well, let's cover the Stones. So we, David Douglas and Noel Archambault sort of took all their videos that they had of this show and started making shot lists, talking about shot lists. We had an IMAX camera that had 3 minutes of film in it, and the Rolling Stones had songs that were 6-7 minutes long. So it's like, how the hell are we going to do this? So we divide the songs up into, different cameras. We'd cover different sections, and I might cover the first of Tumbling Dice and the last of Tumbling Dice, and somebody else would cover, and would overlap. It was a real nightmare what they did. To cover all these songs with cameras that only ran for 3 minutes.
Could you swap out the film? I mean, you have a dedicated film guy, right?
Change film. If it's a 6-minute song, you could probably get a roll and a half in, maybe, if you were quick changing film.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. And then Tony was tasked with taking all of that footage, not only in editing it, but getting it in sync, because we use the live sound.
Right.
From one particular concert, and then maybe a couple of concerts, but mostly it was one recording, and then synced everything else to that. So it was a real nightmare on her part. And the problem, this was before digital editing, so I believe she was working on 35mm print down. So it was physical snip, cut, splice.
It was literally cutting room floor.
Yeah, and then she had to have preview screenings for the Stones to make sure Mick was on screen enough, and Keith to make sure he was on screen enough, and got his guitar solo in, and so it was a real nightmare.
So those guys would watch. Those guys had not final cut, but they had input.
They definitely had input. Mick would show up, very businesslike with a clipboard and a stopwatch and a, light so he could write notes, and Keith would show up with a bottle of Jack Daniels, But yeah, they were very serious about it, and it was a film that was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
We were in a situation with the theaters like Smithsonian. Well, they were a bit more liberal than a lot of them, but a lot of these theaters were very, very conservative. You couldn't have any cultural nudity in a film. If you did the Amazon, you couldn't have cultural nudity. You'd have
cultural nudity, meaning like the National Geographic.
Yeah. So playing the Rolling Stones in a place that doesn't want
Amazon tribes.
drugs,
Yeah.
rock and roll.
Right. Right.
So it didn't get the acceptance that it would have had it come along 6 or 8 years later.
Right. What was
Uh,
that? 1990.
it was 1990. It was the Steel Wheels tour. They did the Steel Wheels tour in the U.S. and then they went to Europe and did Urban Jungle. But we wanted the Steel Wheels set, and this whole thing came about and didn't get approved until after the U.S. tour was over. So we had to go to Europe to shoot the Stones on the Steel Wheel set. So they would leapfrog this set among the venues, and some of the people got Steel Wheels and some of the people got Urban Jungle in different
Can you
places.
see that now? Can you see the Rolling Stones IMAX film?
It's available on Blu-ray.
Okay.
There's been some legal ramifications with the Stones.
Right.
I don't think the Stones particularly, but the promoters at the time. There's big lawsuits and stuff like that about, well, it didn't play enough, so we didn't make enough money. I don't, again, I try to stay out of the politics.
That's the not fun part. Yeah.
That's
Shooting musicians is always,
if they could get their act together and get everybody together and get it digitized into the digital realm, I think they would do really well with the film right now, especially since Bill Wyman left the group right after that show. He was the bass player, and then Charlie Watts passed away this year. So I think they would do really well if they could bring it back, and especially in a digital format.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Queen and Elton John, and there's a movie coming out about the Casablanca label, and their music nostalgia is running hot right now. They should.
I am supposedly going to be DPing a PBS series on R&B. So
cool,
which should be fun.
Congrats. That sounds.
We've done the pilot and everybody likes it. We're just waiting for them to sign the check.
I'm sure that'll happen quick.
It's that check signing is the thing that.
God,
that.
I'm certainly no Hollywood guy, but I've kind of been, the last 5 years or so, I've been interested in doing projects, and oh my God, this industry is make your head explode.
You watch films and you're going, they paid money for people to do that film, and I can't get funded.
I know it's. And people say one thing and it doesn't happen. And anyway, it's been
they paid money for after school and summer job, and I can't get funded.
Exactly. Chesapeake. You did a movie called Chesapeake with a good friend of mine, Jeff Corwin.
Jeff Corwin. Yeah. Hey, I introduced you to, so don't tell me who he is.
I know. And so I went up, I hung out, stayed at his house. I was doing a speech in Boston, so I got to meet Jeff. And
Jeff's a sweetheart. I love him.
He's a great guy. He's got we have some ideas of some shows to do, and I don't know, we'll see if they ever happen. But I'm reading a book. James Michener wrote a book called Chesapeake, and it is spectacular. And that's where I'm from. My parents live on the Bay. I grew up in Maryland on the Chesapeake, and so
I know I kept getting text messages from your mom when I was up there saying, "Come by and have dinner."
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's there. Anyway, it's so how was that? I haven't seen the movie. Is it out? And
it's an interesting film. It was they brought me in to basically handle the IMAX niche of it, and make sure that Jeff got good coverage, and so I did most everything with Jeff on screen, and then everything else they sort of went out and had a B unit that was out shooting things. So I don't take credit for all of it, but it was a lot of fun. I think having Jeff really makes the movie a little bit more universal. Rather than just, I was worried that just theaters around the Chesapeake would be taking it, but I saw that it was playing in Galveston and
really?
A few other places. So I think having Jeff on board was a really good choice. It was the first time IMAX director, and we got along really well. Greg and I got along well. great production company. Was produced by PBS station in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
They did a great job, and yeah, it's a nice look at the environment and the ecosystem around the Chesapeake. I would have liked to have done more. I think there's more stories that could have been told, but you know,
Right.
with IMAX, you're limited on time on screen with institutional theaters, because they like this to turn the shows around every hour
On the hour, so the movie
to
can only be 43 minutes or something.
maximize their daily profits. So
Right.
you know, and get more school kids, because that's what makes, you know, these sort of films really, the school field trips, which COVID has really played havoc with,
Killed, yeah.
Are bread and butter for these theaters. So,
Right.
And that's the type of film that, well, A Beautiful Planet and all the documentary styles that I've been working on are those sort of films.
I think my vision and when I went to the IMAX headquarters there in LA, I guess 2 years ago, I would love for A Beautiful Planet to be seen by every 7th grader in North America. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
would be
Every 7th grader on the planet.
on the planet. Yeah. That we could dub it in different languages.
Yeah.
It's just, it would inspire more kids to get into science. It would just inspire kids everywhere. That's something we have to figure out how to do that, how to get
Yeah,
A Beautiful
yeah.
Planet. Now they all can't come to an IMAX theater and sit and watch it, but we'll have to figure
No.
something out because
Well, I was invited to a State Department program called American Film Showcase because of A Beautiful Planet, and so I've taken the film to Peru and Turkey.
oh wow.
Over the last 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and screened it for folks there and school kids, and I mean, Turkey was great. Peru, we didn't get to show A Beautiful Planet because of restrictions in the contract, but Turkey, I was able to show A Beautiful Planet, and the kids were they went crazy.
Oh, I'm sure they loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've had this amazing documentary career. How about scripted, like a fictional scripted film or TV series? You shot those too, right?
I've done a few of those. I did unfortunately didn't ask me about one of them, so we won't talk about it. A feature a few years ago that was interesting, to say the least.
There were so many.
So bad that you actually walk out of it when it's a third of the way in, it's pretty bad.
What was your role? Were you the DP?
Yeah.
Oh man.
It looked good. It just didn't flow very well. And anyway, there was talk recently of redoing it, reshooting it, but I think I'll avoid that. But we had fun, and I got to work with some of my students from Full Sail that I brought them on for the shoot.
So do you work with, when you're doing a scripted film, do you work with the actors or do you let the director work with the actors?
Primarily, the director handles the actors. Now, I get this question all the time from my film students is, who works with the actors, or what's my job as a DP?
Right.
Your job as a DP is to get what the director wants onto the screen.
Right.
And some directors don't want to have anything to do with camera.
Right.
So I've got the actors. I'll take care of them, and they give you free reign to do whatever else. And some are very, very hands-on. Some are former directors of photography themselves and are probably more capable than you are of shooting the film. So they'll be more hands-on. But and some of them don't like actors. And there, so it varies from production to production. I do tend to be kind of proactive with the actors more than a lot of directors sometimes would want, just because I am seeing it from a different way than they are.
Will a director look through the lens, or will the director watch the performance on the monitor?
Depends,
I guess
again,
it depends on the director.
It depends on the director.
Right.
Steven Spielberg will, set a shot. You're right here, you're this high, you're on a 40.
Right.
So there's not much you can do about that. But others are not. They just like, okay, you go do your thing, I'll have the actors in front of the camera.
Because that's real. The director's job is to get the performance out of the actor. Yeah. I would think, for the most part. And when John Seal was on, he was talking about exactly what you were just talking about, different roles. And sometimes the actor will look at him like, did you get it? Did I nail the performance or not? And some directors would really get pissed. Like, that's not your job to tell him. It's my job to tell him. He learned early on not to, like, he would film it and then look away because the actor was trying to figure out,
trying to get feedback from the DP.
So he would like shoot it and just not even look at him.
It's a slippery slope. Part of your job as a director of photography is to make your day, is to get the film shot. And if you're doing 48 takes because the actor is not thinking that you don't like what you shot, then you're not helping your case.
Right.
There's a lot of balls in the air in my profession. You're trying to keep the director happy, you're trying to keep the first AD happy, trying to keep the actors happy, and then you're managing everybody else.
Right. But I'm going to talk about everybody else. Let's talk about lighting. We talked about the importance of sound. I was in space. We were doing this one shot, and I said, "Hey, let me go get some lights." And the person I was with said, "Oh, we don't need lights. Lighting's fine. Lighting doesn't matter." And I was like, "I'm just a fighter pilot, but I think lighting matters." So who does the lighting? I always get gaffer and grip confused.
Okay, well, first off, the DP is in charge of the lighting.
Okay.
And it depends on which system. In Britain, you have a lighting cameraman and you have an operating cameraman. The lighting cameraman handles the lighting, and the operating cameraman handles everything else. But typically in the US, it's the DP that's in charge of the lighting. Now, he doesn't physically get up there and do it. That's usually the gaffer and the his crew's responsibility. And the gaffer won't necessarily get up there and hang a light either. He'll have his crews do that. He's more or less the foreman of the lighting crew.
Right.
And a grip is basically someone that I don't want to say just, but their main job is to work with that equipment, a flag or a light stand or the camera or the tripod or whatever, rigging something,
electrician,
dolly. Yeah, I say pushing the dolly grip is a very tough job. There's lots of really talented dolly pushers out there that make your job so much easier.
Right.
It's the gaffer is kind of the DP's right hand man. He's always a good gaffer, is right over your shoulder, listening in on your conversations,
right?
Being 4 or 5 steps ahead of you if he's good,
right? And, it sounds like in the military he would be the NCOIC, the NCO in charge, who's kind of the guy that gets it done.
Yeah.
The DP would be the captain, and the gaffer would be the NCO in charge. So you've done all of these jobs. Which one's your favorite?
Oh, I enjoy being DP because I like being in charge of stuff. I like telling people what to do.
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. I want to get into that. By the way, in the US it's DP, and in the UK it's DOP, but they're both
it's universal. It's director of photography is just a job title.
Right.
Cinematographer is the profession.
Right.
I am a cinematographer. It's the American Society of Cinematographers.
Right.
It's not the American Society of Directors of Photography.
Right. But the credit you see on at the
The
end isn't
credit is you're
cinematographer, it's
hired
director of
as a
photography.
cinematographer. You're hired to be director of photography.
So how long does it take to light a scene? Back to lighting. I'm in this room right now. I've got 6 lights on. Just
Oh,
sitting here.
congratulations! I thought it was kind of bright.
Yeah, it's probably too much.
I have one on.
But that really sets the tone of the film, right? Like,
right.
There's a million different ways you could light a shot.
You're very high key sort of lit there, and I'm very film noir sort of lit.
Right.
Here. So yeah, it sets the tone of the film. It can set the mood for the scene. You can make people look a lot different depending on how you light them, depending on your lens choice. So you have to take a lot of that consideration. If you make an actress look bad, you're not going to work too long.
Right.
If a good friend of mine shoots the Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, was it Frankie and Grace and Frankie, whatever that is, show. But he says he wraps the set in white cloth and lights through that, so it's very even and fills in all the creaks and crevices and things like that. And Jane and Lily like him because he makes them look good.
Look 10 years younger.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember in A Beautiful Planet, I've told this story before, but the one scene I was most proud of, there's one where Samantha's in the cupola, which is this big 7-windowed module, and she's taking pictures, and I'm moving in. And I think you and I think I called you on your cell phone probably to talk about this.
Yeah. We had, I think, several conversations on that.
To get her lit and, properly, and to have Earth lit is super hard. And we had to wait until she was over this green jungle, because over clouds, the clouds just are way too bright.
Reflect too much light back. Yeah.
So she was literally over the Amazon watching out. She gave me a countdown, and as soon as she said go, like I hit start and I started moving in, and because we wanted some camera motion. Anyway, if you watch the movie, you probably won't even notice the scene. But for me, it was like the biggest scene, because we just have these little lights in space. They're not very powerful. And like in here, I've got these big lights. One of the problems with computers, I've got a nice webcam, ultra high def webcam, but it's still a webcam. It's not what you're shooting with. So no matter what lighting I have, it adjusts back to make it look like this. And so you need that manual control. In fact, in space, you disabled any automatic feature. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I took all the automatic stuff and threw it out the window.
So we had to manually do everything.
With automatics fine on a situation like this where you're not changing, you're not moving around. Once you start moving around, if you gosh, what did I see last night? I think it was Cyrano I was watching with Peter Dinklage. There's a shot they're moving between these columns, and the columns are alternately blocking and allowing the light in. So they're going light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. If you do that on automatic, you're going to the exposure is going to so you can't do that. You got to learn the
manual shutter and aperture and
setting. I gave Marcia a shirt. It's got the picture of a top of a camera, and it's set to the dial set to M for manual, and it says across the top, everybody's a photographer until.
That is awesome. These things are they're pretty great in most circumstances.
They'll get a good image.
And
they're starting to give you more control of it, but
until you understand the basics of photography, it's not. So what well, you and I worked on One More Orbit. Our friend Hamish Harding had this crazy idea to set a world record flying around, and we wanted to do it on the anniversary of Apollo to honor the Apollo mission and have an environmental angle to it. And in typical Hamish fashion, the whole thing came together at the absolute last possible minute. So we
Last minute, I think, is a little is a little generous.
a little generous. Exactly. So originally the plan was for me to fly, but I didn't have time to get checked out. And he said, "Why don't you make a movie?" And I'm like, "That's what I want to do in life. That's exactly my goal." So the first thing I did was call you and say, "Hey, James, can you help me out here?" And that was a fun, for me anyway. You've done a lot of crazy stuff, but that was a really fun project.
That was definitely a fun.
It was unique.
3 or 4 days.
Yeah, right. Well, it was by the time we prepped for it and wrapped it and stuff like that. But yeah,
we were in LA together, I think at Cinegear, whenever.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You first said that Hamish was interested in doing this, which that's the 1st of June in 2019. And we would wrap production by July 12th or something like that.
Right. It was crazy. It was just weeks. Yeah. And but
when you're looking at a world record flight around the world, for speed, you don't have a lot of time to mess around. So you gotta,
if we had a year, we always said in the Air Force, work expands to film the time allotted. So sometimes you're better off just not having time and just getting it done.
Yeah.
You'll just do more work if you have more time. So coming up with the story was a big challenge. So part of One More Orbit, we had the story, and part of it was, let's just film it, and then in editing we'll tell the story. And this, one of the stories that I've told before, I always thought of myself as a camera guy. I love hanging out at the clubhouse in Hollywood, the ASC clubhouse, where all the cinematographers are. Whatever. And I asked you to be our director of photography, and then we had our directors meeting a week or two before, and we had hired a different guy for each location. Nick Sadler, Dan Green, Bill Bennett. They all went to our refueling sites. So they went to Kazakhstan and Mauritius and Punta Arena in Chile. And you were supposed to fly on the airplane. We'll talk about that in a second. And we were in this meeting. And so I started out, I'm like, "Hey guys, here's the vision. This is what I'm looking for, a couple minutes." And then I handed it over to you, and you immediately dived into this. I don't even know what you were talking about. It was some language that I don't speak, language. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm not a DP. I think I can be a director. I was a director for that. I would like to direct films, but I like, a man's got to know his limitations. And I realized in that meeting that's not my thing.
Well, I've learned that if you don't know what you're talking about, fake it till you make it. So
yeah. And then you end up with Theranos in Silicon Valley. But the guys that you picked really, they did an amazing job, because while they were like their own production on site, and they got some great shots and that made it into the movie that weren't planned.
I approached it much like, and pulled a lot from my experience with you guys in the astronaut office. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to be at all these spots.
Right.
And I knew I had to rely on crews that could make decisions on the run. And so yeah, I tried to pick guys that I knew could do it by themselves without any input from me. And so we again, back to the shot list, we gave them the shot lists and said, if ET shows up, be sure to shoot him, even if he's not on the shot list.
Exactly.
And that's how we got the stuff with the lady in Mauritius, who was on the Apollo 11 news reporting crew, and the stuff in Kazakhstan, not Kazakhstan.
Both. Kazakhstan was Gennady and
with Gennady and the all that beautiful stuff that Dan shot with the drone. And things.
It was all kinds of great stuff that weren't on the shot list. They were on the shot. Right.
Bill Bennett, who went to Punta Arenas, is a pilot.
Yeah,
he flies and is one of the top car commercial shooters in the world. So he's used to working under pressure. He knows about airports. He knows about aviation. And I knew and I knew that Punta Arenas was going to be a tough one.
It was, yeah.
Middle of winter, and it was dark, and it was at the end of a very long leg, and I knew he would get what we needed there, and so that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, he was great. And the fixer, we had a fixer there, just a local guy that was just getting stuff done. And Bill interviewed him, and he was great. It was a spectacular interview that came in the movie. So it was and that's documentary. I think if this was scripted, obviously you're going to stick to the script for the most part, but documentaries give you that freedom to just film what you can.
And that's finding the story. That's finding stories to tell. And I think he brought in the Magellan, the 500 Years Magellan tie-in there. And
but that guy was not an actor. He was just like I said, I think he was the fixer, and he just.
But it's a matter of just talking with people and getting them comfortable on camera, and then wading through and pulling out the nuggets from all the garbage.
So as part of the plan, this round the world flight, we had going over the poles. It was tough because we needed a lot of gas because they were really long legs, but we were planning on you flying. And then the morning of, we get this call that, hey, we're overweight by 69 pounds or something like that. So you literally showed up with your gear, and it's like, man, we're sorry, but you got a pretty good consolation prize.
I got a fun consolation prize in getting to fly in the F-104 Starfighter to come and meet you guys down in South Florida and fly back to the Kennedy Space Center in formation with and shoot all that. So I got a jet ride out of it. So
you got a F-104
a lot more fun
ride.
jet
I've
ride
never had one of those.
Out of it.
But as part of that, we had two legs that were short. They were only 10 hours, and so we had some weight. We didn't need to fill up with as much gas, and so we literally called. We were going to fly you to Punta Arenas, our fourth leg, but it was going to take you longer to get there than it was going to take us to go 3/4 around. We didn't have enough time to fly you down there commercial. So you got the F-104 ride. But so we literally called Dan in Kazakhstan and said, hey, when you're filming us on getting fuel in Kazakhstan, just keep on filming us as we walk up the stairs, and just keep the camera running. And we'll drop you off in Mauritius.
We'll drop you off in Mauritius.
Yeah. And we're like, don't forget your passport. So he had, I don't know, no time to plan that flight. And same thing with Bill. He just filmed us, walked up the stairs with us, and flew the last leg. So the lesson, I think, is if you're going to be in the film industry, you got to be flexible.
Flexibility is key. If you're not amiable to change in your schedule, you best not get into this business.
Right. Exactly.
But Bill still talks about that flight. I mean, he had such a great time.
Yeah. Bill, I mean, it was fun. He helped film. I think he was probably a camera operator or something, but he was on the right stuff.
Yeah.
One of the best aviation movies of all time. So he's had an amazing career.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What movies are you most proud of?
I think it's got to be the space films, and it's pretty much a tie between Dream is Alive and A Beautiful Planet, with Blue Planet being in that mix as well. So
they're all great. I mean,
my top three.
Yeah.
You
need a Mount Rushmore. So what's a fourth one you'd add on there? So you Dream is Alive, Blue Planet, and A Beautiful Planet. You got one more. After School?
I guess Hubble.
Hubble.
After School.
Hubble was really unique. Hubble was the only one that, well, I guess they were all different, but Hubble was kind of unique.
Hubble was it came about because trying to remember the time frame here. No, I'm thinking the wrong movie. Because Hubble was narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
And he's the one that gave Tony the idea of making a follow-on to Blue Planet, which became A Beautiful Planet. kind of got her kick started on doing that, because he had, when they were recording Hubble, you know, he said, yeah, you know, as a kid in LA, I saw Blue Planet and loved it, and and let's make another one. And so that kind of got Tony thinking about making a Beautiful Planet. Yeah, Hubble was interesting. We had, of course, filmed the original deployment of Hubble Space Telescope on STS-31
in 1990.
in 1990. So we had the original deployment, and then we flew. That was going to be part of an International Space Year film, but because of the issues with the mirror on Hubble, we decided to not push that production and wait until the first repair mission went up and made the corrections to Hubble. So that became part of the keynote of Destiny in Space.
Right.
So we left the Hubble as an operating really good piece of equipment rather than a joke.
Right.
Than it would have been. So that was us making that decision and not wanting to make NASA look bad. You know, we could have gone and fulfilled our contract with International Space Year stuff, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted Hubble to look good and NASA to look good at that. So that's why that decision was made. So we had all this footage from the original launch, and then the first repair mission, and then we were able to get on the final repair mission, so that we were able to tell the whole life story of Hubble in a way that would never have been able to do with any other type of space hardware.
Right. That was you really filmed those movies during a golden age of space filming, because we had space shuttles with lots of people and lots of room and lots of camera gear.
We had a space truck.
Yeah. It was a really cool time to be filming in space. And now, you know, the Russian, my crewmate from my space station flight, Anton Shkaplerov, just brought up a Russian director and a Russian actress, and so they're making a feature. There's talk.
I had a little heartburn with all their announcements of the first movie shot in space with that. So
the first one shot in space in 2021.
Yeah.
But you know, it'll be I think the first feature.
Feature.
Like scripted.
Scripted.
I don't know how it's going to be.
I think that's probably correct. I think there might have been some other things done, but that's the first, fully intentioned.
And there's talk of Tom Cruise going up with Axiom on a SpaceX, and I'm not sure if that'll happen or not, but what do you think of that? What do you think of I think it's cool. I really prefer live humans over computer generated humans, which is why I liked Apollo 13 so much.
Yeah.
It was in the Vomit Comet. There's an airplane that goes up and pushes over, and you get 20-second shots, but that's still real humans. It's
still real humans in zero G.
Right. It's not, Sandra Bullock on wires or something like that, which is cool what Chivo did, but that was amazing. But you need a story.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the challenge, to see what kind of story these folks come up with. That's going to be a really big challenge.
That isn't so forced. You just can't force a story into something that isn't there, and that'll be the real potential of. And I think they had some excitement while they were up there, didn't they? Didn't they have a leak or?
There was cracks. The Russian segment has cracks. There was an air leak, and they've put the station out of control twice. Although,
with their docking, their jet firings on those things. Yeah,
that happened with. One day when I was there, Samantha came down and said, "Terry, does the Soyuz have a red light on it?" And I was like, the first thing I did was I went to the computer to see if we were out of control, because the Soyuz doesn't have a red light on it. It has rocket jets, and when they fire, they look red. So I knew one of the rockets was firing, and they made there was just a software error, and it put the ISS out of control. Now, when the ISS goes out of control, it's like watching paint dry. It moves at 0.1 degrees per second, and you don't know what's happening and whatever. But
It's none of this tumbling and flying around George Clooney
screaming
style.
and explosions and oh my God. Yeah. Like in Hollywood. So that's the point. And when you film on the ISS, it's a working space station. You know, they got work to do. It's not like when you're on a set, you own the set and the director tells you what to do. And that's not quite like that on the ISS. So, but I'm interested to see what happens. I think the key is going to be story for those movies.
Well, that's something that, you know, I've got to give you and your crewmates credit for on A Beautiful Planet is the people who are in charge of your life at NASA basically stood up in a meeting and said, we are not going to put IMAX on the timeline for you. Which is like, okay, well, how the hell are we going to get this movie shot if we can't get any time to shoot it? And you guys took time out of your own and carved time out to make that happen. And had it not been for that initiative on your part, you know, we wouldn't have that film. I
always sort of joke that I literally had 1 hour. They gave me an hour of like camera familiarization, which was really valuable because the C500 for you is like easy. For me, it was complicated. There was wires and all kinds of stuff.
You got to hook stuff up. Yeah.
And that's what nobody was doing it. You could use the camera we use the camera to take pictures of Earth, but you need the video camera. The still camera was pictures of Earth. The video camera is like inside human kind of video. And nobody wanted to do it because it was so complicated. And that was I think I had an hour of scheduled time. And I worked on a project years later where the astronauts had 60. I had left NASA. I was just a consultant. They had 60 hours to film out of the cupola on their schedule. Can you imagine that?
Jeez.
And it got so much blowback. The crew didn't want to do it. This is a waste of time. Blah blah blah. I'm like, guys, I would have killed
for that
to have 5 hours of scheduled time. Go look at the beautiful planet. It was amazing. But it was funny that you say that because there was a lot of pushback against that movie. I don't want to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, when Tony makes this beautiful film, the same people that were pushing back are at the red carpet.
They were the first in line,
patting themselves on the back. Yeah, exactly. That's not
that was sort of our history with NASA. And I don't fault NASA for it because it's a big bureaucracy and they're not there to make movies.
Right.
But, you know, that said, IMAX did have a lot to do with NASA coming through the Challenger accident, with NASA, you know, having a lot of positive public relations around the globe for the space program that they would not have had it not been for these IMAX films. I mean, Dream is Alive was seen, the last number I heard, which was 20 years ago, was seen by over 100 million people, you know, around and in 27 languages. You know, I don't think the Russian space movie that they shot is going to get that kind of distribution.
No, clearly not.
That's just one of 7 films. So,
James, the most important thing I did while I was at NASA was help be a part of A Beautiful Planet.
Oh, well, thank you.
Of all the experiments.
Well, you put the cupola in. That was part of it too.
That's true. But would anybody on Earth care had we not filmed A Beautiful Planet? They wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like the cupola was great for the 4 or 5 astronauts that go up at a time.
Yeah.
But for the other millions of people on Earth, they wouldn't know about the cupola if it wasn't for A Beautiful Planet.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it was the most important. Science is great. You know, piloting the space shuttle was, I love those things, but it's through film that you impact people by telling stories. And so
absolutely
for me. Well, anyway, thank you for coming on. This is a long podcast, but we could probably talk for hours.
We have the gift of BS.
Well, I've got, you know, I just finished Yellowstone. I'm looking for something next. So I'm going to put, you know, summer job and after schools on my to-do list.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Good luck finding them.
before I get to 1883, I'll have to get those done. Well, thanks for coming on. And again, if you guys love the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating and like it. And we'll see you next week.